Okay. I want to take this moment to welcome everybody. My name is Daniela Coleman. I'm the Director of Admissions and Recruiting at Johns Hopkins. I'm joined today by a number of speakers. I first want to give this opportunity to Professor Lee, who's with us.
Good afternoon.
Okay, great. Thank you, Professor Lee. And we also have Amina Abduwahab, who works in the Office of Admissions as well.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Fantastic. So today we're going to spend about half an hour. We want to talk a little bit about the Masters of Arts in European Public Policy. But before we begin talking about the program, we also want to give you an overview of Johns Hopkins University and SAIS, particularly about SAIS Europe and Bologna. We're then going to invite Professor Lee to speak in more detail about the Masters in European Public Policy and give a program overview. And then we will obviously talk a little bit about our faculty, the career opportunities at Johns Hopkins SAIS, but also the nuts and bolts of the application process. And most importantly, at the end of the presentation, we also want to obviously give enough time for you to submit your questions in writing. So for that reason, all the participants online have actually been muted, but you can submit your questions in writing on the bottom right-hand corner. And of course, we'll give you the opportunity to stay in touch with us as well. A little bit about Johns Hopkins, for those of you that don't know us. Johns Hopkins is actually, Johns Hopkins SAIS is part of Johns Hopkins University, but the graduate program was founded in 1943 in Washington, D.C. Our founding fathers, who you see in this slide, are Paul Nisse and Christian Herder. And they were American statesmen who got together during World War II to think about a graduate institution for the men and women that would be obviously facing the post-Cold War. In 1943, they founded our campus in Washington, D.C. And about 10 years later in Bologna, Professor C. Groves Haynes founded the Bologna Center. A few years after that, in 1986, Johns Hopkins University founded its third campus in China in Beijing. And we are currently a global institution with a permanent presence on 3 continents. We're training men and women in the fields of international relations, economics, and of course, and in foreign languages. We have launched a new program, the Masters of Arts in European Public Policy, and I will ask Professor Lee to speak in detail about this program and its target market. Professor Lee.
Thanks very much, Daniela. Good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon in Bologna, anyway, possibly good evening in Asia or good morning in North America. Just a couple of words to introduce myself. I began my life as an academic at Oxford and MIT and taught at a number of universities in the United States, Europe, and the UK before going to work for the European Union. And then I had a brief interruption of my academic career that lasted 34 years when I worked in the Council of Ministers and mostly in the Commission in Brussels. Did a number of different jobs, advising commissioners, and ending my career in Brussels as Director General for enlargement negotiations with the new countries that wanted to join the EU. Since then, I've been working with think tanks in Washington and in Brussels, working with various public affairs consultancies and NGOs, and teaching here at SAIS in Bologna. A few words now about the Master of Arts in European Public Policy. This is an innovative new degree that combines academic excellence with professional training, the kind of training that is designed to give you a head start in careers which are somehow related to the European Union. It's also addressed to people who are well into their careers, mid-career people, whose next career move might involve the European Union in one way or another, and it will help to give them the skills to get ahead with their next placement. It's a 1-year degree program at SAIS Europe in Bologna. Most of our existing programs are 2-year programs. This concentrates in 1 academic year courses which expose you both to the best in academic training, drawing on our network in the United States and in Europe and here in Bologna, as well as dedicated professional training. The faculty are top European, American, and international practitioners and academics. The kind of professional training that we're going to provide, just to give you an indication, obviously includes language training, as this is still important for careers related to the EU. French is still an important language, as is German, Spanish, Italian, and other lesser known, lesser used languages, which are still important. You have your choice of language training within the range offered here in Bologna, but also dedicated training in professional writing, the kind of writing that is necessary to prepare memos, notes, documents, but also to write convincing motivation letters when applying for internships or jobs. We also provide training in negotiating technique through simulation exercises. I've run a number of these exercises in recent years, both in the US and here in Europe. Most recently, I've been involved in a simulation of the negotiation of a post-Brexit science agreement between the UK and the EU, and I'm going to run that simulation in the future here in Bologna. So you have a chance to participate in such exercises. There's also training in interview technique, particularly important as you apply for internships and jobs and other practical issues. This degree program will also provide you with access to high-level European decision makers, both here in Bologna, in Brussels, and in capitals around the EU. I will bring to Bologna each semester 3 or 4 senior EU people who will spend time with you, both sharing their area of expertise and talking about careers in and around the EU, sharing their own personal life stories, and advising you as to the best steps you can take to develop your personal career aspirations. An innovation in the MEPP, something new that we haven't offered systematically until now, is coaching and mentoring. I found in my own career and among my staff and others around me that professional coaching can be tremendously helpful, both in preparing for interviews, but also on broader questions about career development. And you will have the opportunity to have individual one-to-one sessions with a professional coach who will come to Bologna from Brussels, a coach who knows the EU and its institutions very well, but also who can help you prepare individually with those issues that you would like to concentrate on in developing your career. Mentoring is distinct from coaching and really is giving you access to a professional to whom you can turn throughout your period in Bologna, but also we're looking into whether the mentoring can continue for a year once you leave Bologna. And these mentors will be drawn from our extensive network of alumni. We have many in Brussels, across the EU, in Asia, the United States, and elsewhere, who are ready to share their professional experience with students on the MEPP course. And as a result of this course, you will have privileged access to mentors with whom you will have a one-to-one relationship during the period you're working on the MEPP. Next slide, please, Daniela. Here is an indicative look at the kind of program you may be following during your period here in Bologna. It's just indicative because in practice next year there will be these courses on offer, but also others that we're developing now and that you don't see yet on this list. In the summer, the short summer term, you have a choice between these two courses, when one or the other will be offered in the summer semester. There will also be at that time a workshop in professional writing. In the fall term, you really get into the substance with courses on the history, the economics, the law and institutions of the European Union. I will also be teaching a course on scenarios for the future of Europe. Scenario building is another professional skill that is used in business. Various leaders in the market have their own teams who draw up scenarios to help investors take decisions about important areas for the future. Also politically related scenario building. As you look through the year, the winter, the spring, and the summer term, there are a range of courses which are both built into the MEPP and are electives. So you have a chance also to choose courses that are on offer in other degree programs. In the final semester, the summer term, there is an option between an internship that we will help you to identify and qualify for, or an original research project supervised by one of our faculty. Next slide. Here you see some of the faculty who will be working with me on the MEPP. Rafaela Del Sarto, who is a specialist on the Mediterranean and the Middle East, and will be teaching courses concerning the EU's southern and southeastern neighborhood. Eric Jones, who's the director of the European and Eurasian Studies program for the whole of SAIS, both Washington and Bologna and China, extremely distinguished professor with many publications, many activities on both continents related to Europe. And Vera Zamani, an extremely well-known economist who will be teaching courses both on international economics and on the history of European integration. This is just a small sampling of our distinguished faculty whose courses will be available to you as MEPP students. Thanks, Daniela.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Lee, for that detailed presentation regarding not only the program, but also the faculty in the program. But in addition, obviously, to the academics and the curriculum, one of the most important things to be aware of is that Johns Hopkins SAIS is a professional school. And at the heart of our education, in addition to the learning, is the opportunity, obviously, to partake in the various career services that are offered on campus. And when you are a student at SAIS, you are actually part of a larger degree program. You have exposure to all the professional courses that are offered at SAIS, and you work with career counselors to define your career objectives. And these are also the individuals, particularly in this program, working through the curriculum that will prepare you for internships and job interviews, but also help you give you those professional skills. We are a professional program, and as a result, a big integral part of this master's is a dedicated career trek to Brussels, but not only to Brussels, to Geneva, to London, to Vienna, Sarajevo, Berlin, Rome, Milan, Amsterdam. The world is your oyster, and this is a huge part of our curriculum as students at SAIS, that you will be actually able to participate in these career treks, meet with representatives from a wide variety of employers, to interact with alumni, because one of the most important things is that we want you to have the jobs and the skill sets that make you marketable in the professional world. And in addition to the career treks that we offer and the opportunities for career counseling and the various professional development courses that you can take, SAIS actually organizes a very developed career weekend. This year in particular, in October, we had a number of employers come to campus to share their experiences, what it's like to work in the private, the public, the nonprofit sector. And we had a number of alumni that came to campus, and that's obviously in addition to a lot of the other initiatives that we have. In the spring, for example, we actually have over 500 alumni that come to campus as part of Alumni Weekend. And although the alumni are here for their reunions, they actually sit with students and share their experiences. And so we have alumni that have come flying in from Brazil to Hong Kong, from Berlin to Bogota. So it's a really wonderful weekend to connect with alumni and learn about the various opportunities for professional development as well. We have a number of different employers that come to campus. Although we are a school of international relations with a focus on economics, and in this particular program, obviously a focus on the EU and its various institutions, we have a number of different employers. And this list here is a list of just some of the employers that recruited our most recent class, whether you're working in public affairs for Airbnb, or working in the European Parliament, or working for an NGO such as Save the Children, or international organizations such as the World Bank. We have a number of different sectors that our graduates are employed in. And this is just to give you an overview of the types of careers that graduates of Johns Hopkins SAIS go on to. Obviously, if you're interested in more details, on our website, we actually have various career surveys and lists of the various employers from year to year, so you can get a sense of how our students have navigated and gone on to different careers following their studies at SAIS. Our alumni network is key to our education, and as part of the program, not only you're part of a cohort or a group of 20,000 SAISers around the world, but you're also part of a Johns Hopkins alumni network of 180,000. And that's enormously important as you embark on your career, whether you are in Africa, Australia, United States, or Europe, for example. We have a number of career clubs, we have a number of alumni associations that are actively involved in keeping you connected not only to your peers, but also to relevant events that are happening in the world. I myself, for example, am going to London in a few weeks to hear from our faculty, but also to mingle with students and graduates of our programs in London. But we have a number of different events around the world, particularly as we celebrate the 65 years of the SAIS Europe education. So it's just something to be aware of. We have a professional alumni network that is here to serve you. So we've spoken a little bit about the curriculum. We've given you some information about the types of faculty and the career opportunities that you would be exposed to as a student at SAIS. It's now time for us to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the application process. Everything is virtual, so it's pretty straightforward. All applicants start an online application. We do ask for some material when you do this online application, so we will ask you for some biographical information. We do ask you for an updated copy of your CV. But as part of the application, there are two important documents that you will need to prepare. One is called the Statement of Purpose, and another one is called the Analytical Essay. The Statement of Purpose is a personal essay. It's about 600 words about you. What makes you unique? Why are you ready to go to graduate school? Why is this the right program for you? You only have 600 words, but it's an opportunity for us, for you to tell us something more than we can not get just from looking at your CV or reading your letters of recommendations. And so this is really an opportunity to share your personal journey, to share your goals and your dreams, and to give us a sense of who you are as a potential student at SAIS. The Statement of Purpose is very different from the analytical essay. The analytical essay, on the other hand, is a sample of your writing in English on any topic of international or economic significance. We want to see a little bit about how you write. For some of you, it may be the first time that you're writing an academic paper in English, and for others, it may be part of your program. But we do want to be able to see that not only that you have English at a level to study at the graduate level, but that you're able to make a coherent argument. So while the Statement of Purpose is a personal story, the analytical essay, which is about 600 words as well, is a story about any issue of international significance. And we would encourage you to submit on something that you know about, because this is probably going to be the basis of your interview. So if you've written maybe a paper that you want to recycle, that's fine. Just make sure there's a logical beginning, a middle, and an end. But bear in mind that this is probably the argument or the issue that when you interview with us that we're going to ask you about. So make sure that you submit something that you're interested in. In addition to the Statement of Purpose and analytical essay, we do ask for 2 letters of recommendation. You can submit up to 3, but 2 is only the requirement. And ideally, we would like a letter that's maybe one is written by a professor and one is written by a supervisor that you had, maybe somebody that you did an internship with. I would encourage you, when you identify your recommenders, contact them as soon as possible. because you want to brief them on the program that you're applying to. You want to tell them a little bit about what Johns Hopkins SAIS is, because your recommenders are going to get an email prompt when you put their email in the application, and they're going to have to submit a letter about you. So we want them to write something about you, maybe something that you did in your paper, maybe something that you did while you were a student, something that tells us a little bit about how you worked in that internship. And it gives us more of a 360 perspective of who you are as an individual. We also ask for transcripts. So if your transcripts are not translated into English, we will need an official translation. You can submit unofficial transcripts until the official ones are ready, but that is also something very important within your application, because we want to be able to see a little bit about your background. You're not required to have done an undergraduate degree in international relations, but obviously we want to look a little bit about your math, if you've done some econ, to get a sense if you've done some history classes, to get a better sense of you as a student in your undergraduate, and in some cases, some of you may also have other some graduate work that you've done as well. And last but not least, for those of you whose English is not your native tongue and you did not study at a university in which English is the native country. So if you went to university in Canada or the United States or Australia or the UK, you do not need to submit a TOEFL or IELTS, but otherwise it's important that we receive that by the time that you apply. We accept either or, but we definitely want to make sure that you have our minimum requirements. So for those of you that are thinking of submitting an IELTS, we need at least an overall of 7 to apply. For those of you that are thinking of doing the TOEFL, we will need at least 100 for you to be accepted into the program. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we talked about the application materials. Now remember, you can start an application, you can go back, you can save it, but this is what you'll need to prepare. The next step of the application is submitting. And so this program is a rolling application process. What does that mean? It means that while some of our programs have a hard deadline, you can submit an application anytime from today until April 15th. I would obviously encourage you to submit as soon as you're ready, because we only have a select number of spaces available in the program. But one thing to bear in mind with the MEPP program is, by the time that you select, given a few weeks, we will actually interview you right away, and we will let you know more or less a month after you submit whether or not you've been accepted. So this is really an advantage. The earlier that you apply, the earlier you actually know about whether or not you've been admitted. I would say from the time that you apply, you probably will be invited to do an interview, most likely via Skype, within about 3 weeks of your application. And then if you are admitted, you have a month to decide whether or not to come, and that would require submitting a deposit. But the wonderful part about this is that it is a program that has a very short turnaround time. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you hear that you've been admitted, and of course, the sooner it allows you to secure your spot in the class of 2020. So I hope that was clear, but of course, during the question and answer session, we're happy to answer anything that is not. Now that I've spoken a little bit about the program, I do want to talk about the uniqueness of this specific program. As I mentioned at the beginning, not only is the MEPP program very complementary, you're working with senior level individuals who've worked in and around the institutions of the European Union, but we are actually giving you quite the competitive edge as a professional program in your career development. Many of you may have come from undergraduate institutions where the education system has been extremely theoretical, where you've not had that one-on-one interaction with faculty or with staff or with professionals that are here to help you and guide you in your career. And that is something that you would have at SAIS. You would be given an enormous amount of guidance in your professional career, and which would in essence give you the competitive advantage as you approach the job market. Something else that we want to raise awareness of is that the MEPP program, although this particular program, we've actually lowered the cost of the program to now enable the students to apply. we do have a number of external sources of funding that I would encourage you to look into. Particularly on our website, there are a number of organizations, whether they're in your home country, that supply funding that we would encourage you to look into. But there's a number of resources that are out there. So we would strongly encourage you, as you apply and put efforts into your application, you also do the research. A number of students, typically when they come to SAIS, will look into external sources of funding to help bridge the gap in tuition, a combination of whether or not savings and loan schemes that they may be looking into. So it is something that I want you to be aware of. And I want to reassure you that on our website, we actually have a quite an extensive list of external sources of funding that we would encourage you to look into. Something else that I also want to highlight is that on average, about 90% of our graduates are employed 6 months after graduation. That is the uniqueness of applying to a professional program where the focus of your education is not only what you learn in the classroom, but it's to make you marketable for the employment and the job sector. So you are investing in your future. This is one of those investments that over time will appreciate. You are investing in yourself, which is something that I do want to highlight as one of the integral things to think about when you apply for a program such as this one. In addition, we have a number of events in and around the world. We are recording the session, so the individuals that have joined us online, we will be sending you the recording of the session in addition to this slide, but there are a number of events as well, whether you're in the US or in Asia or in Europe, that are happening in and around the next few months. I can name a few in Brussels and London and Geneva in the United States. So if you are interested in learning about an event near you, we will provide you the links if you haven't already looked at our website. But I would strongly encourage you, these are wonderful opportunities not only to meet us, but to meet with graduates of the program who can tell you a little bit about what it was like to spend a year at Johns Hopkins in Bologna. And one other thing I do want to highlight is that on our campus on December 2nd, we actually will host a SAIS Europe Open Day. This is a full event where you meet with faculty and staff, you meet with student government, you meet with the language department, you're meeting with students, you actually have the opportunity to sit in on a class. Professor Lee will be present as well. We do encourage you, if you'd like to come visit us, it is a full day event starting on the Monday morning, ending in the evening, in which we provide you, you're a guest for the day, so you have the opportunity to eat with us, to sit in on classes. If for some reason you can't physically be in Bologna, don't fret. We actually have the opportunity for you to join the session virtually as well. So I would strongly encourage you to join that day, whether you're with us in person or virtually, as you can get to know a little bit more about Johns Hopkins and what an education at SAIS Europe looks like. And last but not least, this is our email to stay in touch with us. We have our phone number. Amin and I, we're real individuals in flesh and blood. This is not an email that's being sent to cyberspace. We actually do interact quite often with participants who are applying to our programs to answer any questions that you may have. Feel free to email us, feel free to give us a call. And what I'm going to do right now is our presentation, the formal part of our presentation comes to an end. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to be able to answer your questions in writing. So first off, we are recording this session and we will be emailing it to you. But now that we've come to the conclusion of the presentation, Professor Lee and I are on standby. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just give me a few seconds and I'm going to start then reading out your questions. There's a chat function. If you haven't noticed it, if on the top right, this is an opportunity for you to submit a question in writing, which I will read out loud. Let us know where you're submitting your question from. We always find it interesting where people apply from. And this is the interactive part of the presentation. So don't be shy. I look forward to reading your questions. Oh, there's a first question here. Okay. So the first question is from Catherine Walsh. Catherine Walsh writes, from Wisconsin, USA. I'm curious if you recommend applying immediately after an undergraduate program or taking a few years for working before applying. That's a great question. I think it really depends on where you are in your career. Obviously, you know, if you feel that you're mature enough to apply to a graduate program, you're ready, you're focused enough, it's really up to you. This is a very focused program, so there is obviously for individuals that want a specific career in international relations with a focus on the EU. So it's really up to the individual. I would really say if you are ready and you have all the materials, feel free to apply. If you want to take some time off to work, it's really a personal decision. I don't know, Professor Lee, did you want to add anything to that, or?
I would reinforce what you just said, Daniela. In classes that I'm teaching at the moment in Bologna, I have both the recent graduates. In fact, we have a program where undergraduates are able to take a course. Are they last year undergraduates, Daniela? Those who are able, senior year undergraduates. So I think that if you are in your early 20s and you've completed your undergraduate education, you can get the benefit of this course as a complement, reinforcing what you've learned as an undergraduate. But equally, if you've had several years professional experience, it can be very useful before you take the next step in your career.
And Catherine, if you are American applying to Europe, I would encourage you to look at the Schumann Fulbright grants that are available for Americans that want to come study transatlantic and EU studies. So if you're not familiar with those, just send us an email and we can send you some information about that. Okay, great. So we have a few other individuals online, so feel free to submit questions as your questions come up, but this is really an opportunity for you to ask us anything that's on your mind. Anything about the application itself or about career services. I mentioned before a number of career tracks. We have a very hyperactive director of career services who organizes a number of different tracks, and these are really important, particularly when you think about Bologna. We are really sort of in the heart of Europe. We're 2 hours from London, we're an hour and 10 minutes from Brussels. So there are opportunities, as when you're a student at SAIS Europe, you have a number of employers that not only come to campus, but you actually have the opportunity to go visit a number of different EU capitals. We have a question from Laura from Valencia, Spain, and she writes, I've seen a list of elective courses and I would like to know how many of them are allowed or required to take. That's a great question. I know that in the curriculum, I don't know if Professor Lee, I believe each student is allowed to take two electives within the year at SAIS in the MEPP program.
That's correct.
Yeah. So the way it works, Laura, is that when you take the electives, these are basically classes that you take with all the other students at Johns Hopkins SAIS. So in the elective portion, you could be taking classes with MA students, with MAIA students, with the MIPP students. They're basically part of the offerings that we have here at SAIS Europe, and we have over 60 classes of which you could choose from. So if you wanted to take a regional area or specific policy area, that is something that you would have the opportunity to do both in the fall term and in the spring term. If you'd like a list of those electives, just send us an email and we can give you a sample of some of the courses that we've had this past year, of which students can choose from.
Just to add, Daniela, there will also be a number of mini courses specialized. I mentioned, for example, the training on negotiating technique, which would be like a half course. And we're also preparing a mini course on professional writing. And there will be one or two other mini courses available on specialized professional subjects.
Great. Fantastic. In addition to obviously Open Day, if for some reason you couldn't come to campus for Open Day, we would obviously encourage you to join us virtually. We've had students that have requested to come visit us, so our doors are open. We're always happy to have you come visit. Just plan in advance. We have students that want to get to see Bologna and sit in on classes. Professor Lee, are you teaching? I believe you're teaching this semester. Is that right as well, or is it in the spring that you teach your course?
No, I'm teaching this semester. I'm teaching a course on the future of Europe.
Yes, which big big question mark.
Lots of question marks. That's what makes it interesting and important.
Yeah, and I think on average our class size is very, I would say, on average we can get 15, sometimes up to 20 students. So it really gives you an opportunity to interact with your professors. Professor Lee, how many students do you have in your current class?
In my current class, I have 22 students, which is a large class.
Yeah.
We actually had to run a process where people were bidding, and
Right.
we had to cap the class at 22.
Right.
But even at 22, I think the students will feel that they get a great deal of individual feedback, both through my regular office hours when I meet with them, but also on every piece of written work, they get detailed feedback. And I think this is one of the things people really appreciate about our programs.
So we still have time for a few more questions if anything comes to mind. Again, as I mentioned, it is a rolling application deadline. I would encourage you, though, it's a limited spaces, so the earlier you apply when you're ready, the earlier you'll hear if you've been admitted. We obviously have numbers of opportunities for you to come meet with us. So whether you join us for open day or one of our alumni events, or you come visit us on campus, there are opportunities to interact with us and meet with current students and obviously with faculty. So it's definitely something that I would encourage you to think about as you put your application together.
If people have questions after this virtual session and they think, why didn't I ask that question? Feel free to email, and Daniela or I or Amina will get back to you.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to just let a few more minutes go by. If I don't see any questions, we'll assume that Professor Lee and I have been extremely thorough in our presentation, or that the prospective students joining online did their homework, so they had all their questions answered before joining. But we are excited about this program. It's a wonderfully been integrated into our campus here. We currently have about 185 students at the SAIS Europe campus from over 39 different nationalities. So it's quite an international student body. You hear lots of languages in the hallway. Obviously, the program of this SAIS Europe is English, but you feel sometimes that you're working at the hallways of the European Commission or at the UN, given how internationally minded our faculty and students are. Okay. So I don't see any more questions. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to conclude this virtual session. We are going to email you the virtual session in a few days. We just want to edit it a little bit for content, but we look forward to meeting with you. Our doors, our phones, and our emails are here for you if you have any questions. And of course, I want to thank Professor Lee for his time today in speaking to us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, and I want to thank our students for having joined, thanking Amin as well. And whatever you decide, we wish you the best of luck, and we remain a resource for you should you have any questions. Thank you for your time and have a great day. Bye-bye.